What makes one agency different from another is the very first principles on which it's begun. If you begin an agency to make money, you will do anything for money, anything at all, doesn't matter how bad it is. If you run an agency to be the British arm of an American agency, you will do what you're told and you will service those clients as best you can. However, Collins and Pearce did not start like that. John Pearce expressed to me that they wanted to do advertising for which they would not have to apologize in polite company. I didn't know what polite company meant.
One of your questions I know you had on your list was, would you describe Tony in one sentence?
Yes.
And I thought about it, and I hope he doesn't mind, but what I've come up with is half vicar, half assassin.
It's the easiest job I've ever had was working with Tony, and it was like flying, for me, it's like flying advertising first class. I mean, how lucky am I?
I think he was one of the group of maybe 6 or 7 people who made CDB famous throughout the world for the quality of their work. He makes connections that most people don't make. He's honourable, charming and quietly flamboyant.
My name is Tony Brignull and I'm a copywriter. I've been a copywriter all my career and I'm still one. I still think of myself as a writer of advertising and other things. I first learned about when I really wanted to be a writer, when I was about 18 or 19, when I read Dostoevsky. I thought, this is so wonderful, so magnificent, that any other life would be meaningless if I didn't want to do anything else. I'd seen a film, I think with Cary Grant in, I think it's he was an advertising copywriter or something like that, and I thought that may be a way I can get into writing. Because I couldn't think of any other way to get into writing. I have worked at a lot of agencies, perhaps too many. The one I enjoyed most was Collins and Pearce, where I felt very much at home. I worked with a very great creative director, John Salmon, who became my mentor and my friend. And I worked also with Neil Godfrey, the art director with whom I made my reputation.
In those days, we used to play football in Regent's Park, and 7-a-side football. And I remember playing at the time, just after Tony had asked to join me, I played a game in goal against Tony, who was a centre forward. And I remember catching the ball from somebody shooting and me catching the ball. And I saw this figure running towards me, quite a well-built, hefty, both of us over 6 feet tall. And it was Tony thrusting forward like a mad bull, running towards me. And I thought, oh, okay, he's just going to stop and give me a kiss or something. But he went straight through, hit me like a ton of bricks, and I fell into the back of the net. And I was really I brushed myself down, stood up, and I was somewhat confused because I wondered why the guy who wanted to work with me was trying to kill me.
The best agencies in London at that time, there were 2. One was Doyle Dane Burnback, the famous New York agency that opened in London in the 60s, and the other one was Collett Dickinson Pearce. And both of those agencies were absolutely the best advertising agencies this country has ever seen.
CDP at that time was the place. I mean, it was B&P sort of were okay, but CDP and Doyle Dane were the 2 best places to work in London.
It was the best agency at the time, and honestly, everybody looked up to them. And I think you can tell by the standard of work that came up. You know, whether it was Alan Baldy or Tony and Neil, I mean, they were doing fantastic work.
That's when Tony and I sat down together and started doing ads, and we just did basically what we felt was the right thing to do for a particular client. And I think we just did our own thing. And that's why we were able to do what we did, because people let us do it, you know.
The 12 years at Collett Dickinson Pierce with Neil Godfrey were my most successful, where we won the awards we did. Everything we did ran, it was an agency geared to selling great creative work.
I remember winning my first pencil at Collett, and I was so proud, and I remember Tony saying, I have 27 of those.
The sheer volume of his work, quite a, I mean, and there's no bummers in there, it's all great, but a massive amount. I mean, 18 D&AD silvers and 3 golds.
The Chivas Regal ad is one of the first ads, well, in fact, the first ad which started my reputation. Why I like it is because it's so simple. It shows a full glass, full to brimming, and the word when. What I like about it particularly is there's no logo, because the logo's on the bottle. If you've got a logo on the bottle, you don't need another one down there. It hasn't got a slogan saying the Prince of Whiskers or anything stupid like that. Mm-hmm. It is just simple elements, a word, a picture, a piece of copy.
And working with him, the things I learnt working with him was like he was always hardest on himself first. And he always aimed for perfection. He knows exactly how to construct an ad to get the reader's attention, you know, make it so compelling, you know, you want to read it, even though that it might be a double-page spread copy, and I mean, page is full of copy.
Now, for Dunn & Company, John Salmon had done this campaign, the initial campaign, and I did this headline, and you know, I didn't care for it. And I threw it away. And this one, success doesn't always go to your head. And the account man came in and took it out of the bin and said, what's wrong with this? I love it, you know. And I thought, yeah, maybe he's right, you know. And now I love it too.
Edit, edit, edit. It's the most important. If you keep editing, there's always a shorter way of saying something. There's always a better way of expressing something. And you'd spend so much time doing that. So at that time, you really learnt the skills of how you get to what the brand's about. Because how do you find that nowadays, you know, if you say USP, people say, what? USP? It's such an old-fashioned word. No, it isn't. It's still there. You're still finding this one little thing, niche in, where you can actually bring it out and actually it go against your competition. Otherwise, what are you saying to people? Why are you better than something else? So Tony was brilliant at that.
He's amazing at getting down, extracting the DNA of a client, that's what I think his great speciality is.
When you meet Tony, he's lovely. How do you do? He's very softly, you know, that lovely voice and mellifluous voice, and as I say, he's very polite, you know, quite formal.
Yeah.
But I've seen him when he's not lost his temper, because he never did lose his temper and shout and scream. But I've seen him when he's been displeased.
Yeah.
And it's quite it's a little bit scary because he's a big man. He's quite a tall guy. He's got big hands, and I tell you, fortunately, I don't think I displeased him.
Well, I did see him fighting a creative director once, and I tended to agree that it was the best thing to do that to that particular creative director. But no, I think it was the size of his brain that actually affected them. I don't think that he always had an argument, a positive argument for why we did it.
And the way he dresses it, when he comes in his suit and he comes in his hat, he always looks as if, you know, there's something very demure about Tony. And he's so good. And when he always used to tell me when he gets up in the morning, first thing he does, he gets up really early, and the first thing he does is meditate.
Yeah, well, Tony was a big yoga fan, and there was a story that a creative team went into his office to present an ad, and Tony was actually upside down, just in his underpants, with his head on a cushion, and they were a little bit thrown, and they said, oh, Tony, we come in to show you an ad, and Tony said, turn it upside down, and they did, and he said, yes, I'll approve it. They walked out.
This advertisement I like because I saw it completely, just everything about it one morning, with the man lying down with a pen going on.
As I was entering his studio, I saw a dustbin lorry come by with a guy standing on the back of it, and it was the bloke in the ad that you can see here. So I asked him if he'd help us out and come upstairs and sit for the ad. And in fact, it's just taken exactly what he was wearing.
And he went out and got a real plumber. And he paid this man £50 to lie down for the day. And I would have to say, if I had to choose one piece of copy that was readable and that I enjoyed writing and people told me they enjoyed reading, it was that.
He knew what he was writing. Every sentence there's no waste there. It's absolutely telling, informing you exactly what he's actually trying to get across. I mean, I don't think anybody crafts their copy like that anymore. I mean, honestly, it's never written like that. It's so persuasive. And even with long copy, you read one line, it goes to the next, it just flows. And I think his art of writing is so incredibly powerful.
The qualities that I like about Tony really is, I mean, he looks like a gentlemanly sort of authoritarian kind of figure. In fact, I think his lines were more like copy lines. They weren't like headlines and contained a lot of humanity.
The campaign for Fiat came to England where we had to pitch for it. We had to just do some 48 sheet posters, and the Italian football team was about to come to England to play in the World Cup against England. So we quickly did this one with this very pretty little Fiat X19. And the headline, "Let's hope the Italian footballers aren't in such good shape," just appeared, and it just was a way of using posters in a very topical way. I think I was a good creative director for young people, but I was pretty tough on senior people, and they didn't like it very much. I guess I didn't like being a policeman either, having to tell them to come back early after lunch or get in on time. I didn't like that aspect of being a creative director. I liked just working with them.
You know, he had a bit of a temper on him too. So, you know, he didn't suffer bad acts. And I think that actually is why it made people better, because you had to improve you had to get your work as good as you possibly could. So it meant that you raised your game.
He expected me to keep up with him, that's for sure. You feel that there's definitely that expectation, but which is good, so it stretches you as a person. He does that.
I did a lot of army officer ads. I loved this one because we did it and the government wouldn't run it. And we had it for 2 years and we kept showing it and they said, no, it's too controversial, too controversial. It showed a Russian tank moving into Afghanistan and the word next. Where are they going to go next? And this is why we need a standing army, because you never know what they're going to do. And then one day in the Commons, Margaret Thatcher said, we wonder where they'll go next. Bang! We were straight down there and said, the Prime Minister said, and it ran the next day. Oh, and I thought, well done. And the account director, we had a lunch for the account director, and we gave him a little bulldog in bronze, and underneath it said, for never giving up. And you know, he cried.
He certainly knew his craft, you know, and he certainly belonged to that golden age of advertising.
Those golden years initially lasted for 10 years and eventually paid out my time in advertising. I don't think we were breaking any rules anymore, but it's like being on a liner. The band is playing, the drinks are being served, the meals are there, but you miss something and it's the sound of the engines. It wasn't driving forward. And my wife said to me, look, why don't you try studying? And remember, I'd left school when I was 16. I hadn't been to university. I hadn't done any adult education. I was a highly nervous person. My house had been bombed flat during the war. I think it made me a very febrile young man, unable to concentrate on anything very much. That was a very rough area indeed. It was the poorest area of London. This is not a rags to riches story, I have to say. I was always well-dressed, well-treated, well-fed, everything, but it was a slum. I mean, my parents were very good to me, but there was no culture in the house at all. There was no music, there was no library, there was no theatre, there was no dinner parties, there was nothing. They were good, solid working-class people, and I have every reason to be grateful to them.
No, there's always something lurking in Tony's background that was very difficult to define.
And I never thought that I could ever get to Oxford or even university. But when I went and I was interviewed, a wonderful thing happened in the interview. I was given a poem to read and criticize. And they said, would you like to say anything more about it? Well, I'd been reading Dante in Italian. I don't have it in it, but it was in English on one side. And I learnt about terza rima, which is the rhyming scheme in which Dante uses. And I said, this poem is written in terza rima. And they said, is it? And they turned away from me because one was an Italian lady and one was the English professor. And they looked it up and they said, it is. And I thought, God, thank you. How lucky I am. They gave me exactly the right question. I had exactly the right answer. The process of writing copy and writing a poem are very similar in that you have to be brief, to the point, and express yourself very clearly. I'd like to think I've had an inspiring impact on my fellow writers and fellow creative people, just as they have had on me. And the best way to do that is by doing good work, which they acknowledge and appreciate. Always by your own work, first of all, not by what you say or what you preach. You do the work, they like it, they appreciate it. So it's always your own work.
He wrote me a letter when he left, and it said, Dear Richard, I want to thank you for working so hard over the past 9 months. I've constantly found your writing refreshing and inspiring. In fact, I came to look upon you to keep me up to scratch. I have no doubt that you will soon be recognised as one of the best writers in London, so you will probably never need a reference. However, if you do, please feel free to use this letter. It's just great to be that close to people that good.
Yeah.
And it was a huge, huge benefit to my career.
Working with him was like that. He is so such a perfectionist. He just oozes instills standards at every level, whether it's art direction, writing or anything like that. He really, really backs you up if you want to use the right person. He makes sure you get enough time to do the work.
You want to show them affection and love, and they want to work for you. It's not, and you do feel it. They're fellow creative people. You want them to succeed. One rule you must always have as a creative director: you should amuse, you should challenge, you should be a courteous guest in somebody's house and not be bombastic or over-exaggerate, and just give somebody a good moment in their lives.